Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica, and in this video I am going to show you how I transformed this old beat up cube storage organizer into something more beautiful. So I wanted to preface this video with a little bit of a backstory on this piece of furniture. So this is a cube storage organizer that my husband and I bought probably about 10 years ago, and it has had many different uses in our home. First, it was just kind of like a decor piece, you know, when it was all fresh and new. And then we used it for baby items, and then it was in my kids' room with their toys, and then it was back out into the living room. And now where we live, this is right in our entryway. This is our kitchen here, and then our front door is right here. So it's the first thing that you see. And I have tried different ways to make it look better. So first things first, I ended up painting actually all 4 of the fabric bins, which turned out awful. I'll show you a pic here in a second. And then about 6 months ago, I had enough. And I wanted to make this over. And I'm going to show you that process and something that I learned and something that I was able to figure out to finish this makeover. But really my goal was to get a piece of furniture. I really want a wooden dry sink, but I haven't been able to find one that will sit nicely because this wall is pretty short. And so this fits perfectly. And I figured if I'm not finding what I want, I'm just going to make do with this until I can find something that I want. So that being said, I finally figured out how to get the look that I wanted. So I'm going to show you everything from start to finish in this video. And we're going to start about 6 months ago when I first initially started this process. So let's go ahead and cut to then, and let me show you what I did to start this project. So here is the before. As I said, I had painted all of the bins, and you can tell that they didn't turn out the greatest. I was trying to save money instead of buying all brand new bins. This was my solution. Obviously, wasn't working out too well. And you can see there's a lot of wear and tear just from moves and having kids and whatever. There's some gouges in the side and scuffs on the top, and we really just needed to do something about it. So we're at 6 months ago. This is the start of the project. So the first thing that I decided to do was go ahead and patch as many of the holes as I could, which included all of the, like, where we screwed things in, and then any marks, any nail holes, all of that good stuff. I just used some wood filler that I had on hand. This was just the color I had. It really doesn't matter if you're going to paint over top of it. So I went through and filled in all of the holes and scuffs, and then we're going to go ahead and sand everything down. So I just sanded with this 220 grit sanding block that I had on hand, and I just wanted to make sure that all the spots that I had filled in were flush with the surface. And then when you're going to paint laminate furniture, you do want to scuff it up a little bit. So I just took that sanding block and went on the entire piece that I was going to be painting, which I painted pretty much every surface on the cube. So I wanted to make sure that I scuffed everything up just a little bit. You don't have to go crazy. Don't hurt your arm sanding. You don't have to get out the orbital sander. Just give it a nice little scuff, and then we're going to prime. Now, when it comes to laminate furniture, this step is vital. You cannot skip it because your paint won't stick. So what I'm using is this Bin Shellac primer. It is a little bit pricey, like $20-something for this little thing, but you don't need a lot. And what this is going to do is give us, first of all, it's going to stick to the laminate, which is important, but it's also going to give us something to paint on where the paint is going to grip. So do not skip this part. I can't emphasize that enough. When you're painting laminate furniture, you have to do this part. I did a total, I think, of 2 coats. I've done this with a paintbrush and a roller. I highly recommend the roller because this is pretty runny and liquidy, and the roller is just going to give you a nicer finish. I'll link everything that I used down below, and don't judge me for the socks and sandals. I don't care. I was comfy on this day. It was cold, whatever. So going through, putting 2 coats of the Bin Shellac primer, and then we are going to go to paint. Now, before we paint, I do want to say that I like to do a really light sanding because, as I said, this primer is a little drippy, and so you might have some drip spots that you want to make sure you go ahead and sand down. I recommend using like a 400 grit sandpaper. That way you're just getting a really fine finish. So go ahead and do a little bit of light sanding and then wipe it all down, and then we're going to paint. To paint, I am just using a leftover paint that I had. I've used it in, this is like the 3rd project that I've used it, that I've shared on the channel. It is Bare Creamy Mushroom. I absolutely love the color, and I like being able to tie pieces together through paint. So this is a paint and primer in one. Highly recommend Bare paint. I really haven't experimented with other paints, but I like this. You get it at Home Depot, and it's just a nice neutral color. So I went through and gave it, I think, 2 coats of this paint, and turned out wonderful, looked so much better. And then where I went wrong, and the lesson that I learned, was that you cannot put, like, you can't drill or screw anything into these types of things because they're basically paper. So these are really lightweight, and they do that because of the material that they're using. And I thought that I could go ahead and attach legs to this cube organizer just as it was. I obviously did not do a lot of research or use my noggin, but it didn't work out. I had bought these legs. I thought, oh, you know, we can add some height. I think it'll look really pretty. And so I went ahead and attempted to put the legs on, and you cannot do that. So my conundrum then was, okay, I don't know how I'm going to attach any piece of wood or anything on the bottom so that I can then put the legs in. At that point, I couldn't comprehend that. I don't have a saw. I'm like, how am I going to attach a piece of wood to this? So I stopped the project at this point, and I did a couple other things. I'll show you that in a second. But I just kind of stopped and was stumped and was kind of over it. But then I actually ended up doing another project and had the idea of how I could fix this problem. So I'm going to share that with you in just a second. So moving on to present day, I finally had a plan of how I could bring my vision to life. So this is what we started with 6 months down the road. I ended up getting 2 new bins, and I covered the other 2 in this very pretty fabric that doesn't go at all with my home. I don't know why I chose it. I thought it was very pretty and whatever. So this looked much better. It had a really pretty coat of paint, and the bins looked so much better, but it still wasn't jiving with the rest of my house. So now it's time to actually put my plan in place, and we are going to attach these legs, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So as you can see, I am putting this stuff all over the bottom of the organizer. This is liquid nails, and it's fairly inexpensive. You can get it at any hardware store, and I put the rest of what I had all over the bottom, and you can use a spatula of some kind to do this. I ended up panicking because I couldn't find mine and just got a plastic butter knife, and that worked just fine. I made sure that there was a nice even layer all over the bottom. You don't want to have too much where it's squeezing out the sides. And then I actually had picked up this piece of wood from the restore that I was going to use for another project, never used it, and it was almost perfect in size. It was just about 2 inches too wide, but I decided to go with it, and I've had one side that was completely flush with the back, and then I made a lip on the front, and I actually like how it turned out. It turned out really well. So you can see I had to do nothing to this. I didn't have to cut it or anything. If you do not own a saw, like I don't own a saw, Home Depot and Lowe's, places like that, they will cut boards for you. I don't know the specifications, like if they charge per cut. I have had it done one time where they just cut a board in half for me, and I don't think they charged me for it. But it never hurts to ask. So if you're going to do this project and need a board and you can't find one that is this size or like the perfect size, go ahead and see if your hardware store will go ahead and cut it for you. I allowed the adhesive to dry overnight, and then it was time to attach the legs. So first, in each corner, I measured in 2 inches from the side and then 2 inches up, and where those 2 points intersected, that was going to be where I lined up basically the hardware that you use to attach the legs. So it's this little doodad, and I aligned the middle part with that intersection point that I had marked, and then I just used my drill and put the screws in. All of this came in the kit. I will have it linked down below, but just went ahead and screwed in the 3 screws that come along with it, and I did that for each corner, and then I was able to attach the legs. And to attach the legs, you simply just screw them into that center part, and you've got your legs. There are different kits that you can find out there. Some will be straight up and down, which is what I chose, but you can also have them where it's more that mid-century modern type look that they kind of go out on an angle. Totally up to you. Like I said, I'll link what I found or something similar. I can't find this exact one. But so you can decide which route you want to go. But after I attached the legs, I needed to repaint this. It got some scuffs, and I also needed to paint the new addition, the board that's on the bottom. So I dragged out the can of the same paint, and there's just a little bit left, but it worked out for this project. You can see it's all crusty. But I gave everything a fresh coat that needed it. It was the top, and then the bottom, the new piece or the new board that we attached. And so went ahead and did that. Now, one thing that I could have done that I probably should have done but just didn't feel like doing was caulk the seam between the new board and the organizer. It's just on the front. It would have given it a more polished look. It's not the biggest deal, but if that's something that you want to do and those little details bother you, then I would recommend doing that. Totally not necessary, but I wish I would have done it. It is what it is, but giving it a nice fresh coat of paint, and really I could have just stopped there and put the bins in, but I wanted to take it a step further, and I didn't want to see the bins anymore. So what I decided to do was make a curtain. So the first step was to make a curtain rod, and the cheapest way that I could figure out how to do this was just to use a wooden dowel. I actually had this wooden dowel on hand. I don't know what size it is. You can do whatever size you want. I would say probably stick to the smaller sizes. But I went ahead and measured the width of the organizer and then cut it down just a little bit so that it went in on each side. And I do have a jigsaw, so I guess I lied. I do have a saw, but it's a jigsaw. I just went ahead and cut it where it needed to be, sanded it down with some 220 grit sandpaper. Then I stained it and sealed it with a sealer, and that was our curtain rod. Then we needed something to put our curtain rod in that was attached to the organizer, and so I decided to use this leather. I got it at Hobby Lobby. It was less than $5. And in hindsight, I could have cut this a little bit differently to save a little bit, but basically I needed 2 strips that were 2 inches wide by 3¼ inches long. That is what worked with my rod that I had. So I went ahead and just cut that with my rotary cutter, and we were good to go. And then we were ready to make the curtains. Now, I'm not going to go into all the specifics on how to make rod and pocket curtains. This was actually my first time ever making curtains, and they didn't turn out perfectly, but that's okay. I learned a lot in the process. So I do have all of the measurements and how to figure out what size you need, all of those good things in the blog post that goes along with this video. I will make sure that is linked down below. You can go there and find all the specifics. Or you could also do cafe curtains, and that was one of my intentions. I was actually going to do that. You can just buy the clips and get some tea towels, like flour sack towels, from like Target or somewhere like that. And then you have some no-sew curtains. So there's some options there, but if you want to make curtains like I did, like I said, check out that blog post. But then we needed to go ahead and attach everything so we could have our curtains and they would be in place. So I first went ahead and put the curtains on the rod. You're going to end up with 2 rod and pocket curtains. So go ahead and slide those onto your rod, and then we have to put them onto the organizer. Now, there's a couple different ways you could do this, and I actually had bought something that I could just go ahead and stick, like with command strips, and it was too big and it didn't work. So I came up with a different solution. Obviously, we made our little leather strips, and that's what we're going to use. So what we're going to do is take our leather strip, wrap it around the end of the rod, and then we are going to hot glue the back and use like an upholstery tack, or you could use a nail of some kind and nail it in where you want it to go. This was the easiest way that I found. As I said earlier, you can't just nail things into this because they will fall out. So adding that additional hot glue makes a huge difference. They have not budged. They are totally fine. If you have some other kind of glue, I don't know, you could use that, but hot glue is going to be your best bet. But I'm so happy with how this turned out, and then it was time to stage it and decorate it and make it look even that more beautiful. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it gave you some inspiration, and maybe if you have a cube organizer like this or some other type of cheaper furniture that you have in your home, there are ways that you can make it over. You can upcycle it, you can make it your own and actually make it fit your space and make it look the way that you want, that will go with the feel of your home. And it's really inexpensive to do projects like this. If you search on YouTube or Google, you will find so many different variations of these makeovers. But hopefully you drew some inspiration from this specific makeover. And if you want to see more videos like this, where I do DIY projects, upcycling, furniture, restoring, all those types of things, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and hit that bell notification so you're notified every time that I upload a new video. But thank you so much for being here. I really greatly appreciate it, and I'll see you in my next one.